Hello and welcome to the Linux Spotlight. This show is dedicated to showing off the best thing about Linux, our community. This community is made up of developers, distro maintainers, Linux personalities, and everyday users. Each one plays a vital role in our community, and the goal is to have a discussion with each individual about their journey into Linux and beyond. So join me now as we turn the spotlight on. Hello, I'm your host Rocco, and we are back with another episode of Linux Spotlight. And we have our special guest today, a friend of the channel, a friend to me, English Bob. How are you, Steve?
I'm very, very well, Rocco. Thank you. How are you, brother?
I'm doing really good. So let's start out. I mean, you have a YouTube channel that everybody knows you as English Bob.
Yep.
And we are going to get into your YouTube channel later, and you have a great talk series going on with Zeb and Garth that we're going to discuss. But laying the groundwork for everybody knows you as English Bob. Who is the man behind English Bob?
In a nutshell, a frustrated salesman.
A frustrated salesman.
Yep. Right from the moment I was out of diapers, I knew I always wanted to be in a smart cut suit, selling something to somebody. And that's where I went completely wrong in life. Because right through my whole life, from the age of 16 upwards, my working life, I strove to become a salesman. And every time I got diverted into something else. And I kind of figured one day, okay, why am I not a salesman? It was because I had an inner passion, and that passion and that addiction and that drug is people. I love people. So it really didn't matter that I wasn't my dream of being a top flight salesman, because whatever I got diverted into, I got smothered in people. Men, women, boys, girls, children, all different races from all over the world. And I was very lucky in the job that I did. And that's really what it all came from. I got, I was very lucky to meet my wife at a very young age. And we've been together. It's our 30th wedding anniversary next year.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much, buddy. But we've actually been together 37 years. So she was 16 and I was 19 when we met. I didn't marry her until I was about 26, bless her. So I made her wait.
Well, she stuck around for a reason, man.
Yeah, absolutely. She's very happily married. She's happy and I'm married. But look, you have to take the bonuses in life. I have two wonderful sons. I'm just a family guy and I love people. It's as simple as that.
That's awesome, dude, that people want to hear that, the people that they see on YouTube or videos or wherever are real people. And, you know what I mean? They have a family. They do the same things that they do. It's just they want to see that backstory. So what do you do, man?
Oh, my word. Well, at the minute, I drive a taxi. But for sort of 30 years before that, I was involved in video, first of all. And that's how I got into computers, through video, funnily enough.
Really?
So, yeah. So in a previous life, I started out selling Nikon and Mamiya cameras for a very famous large retailer here in the UK. And then one day the MD came down to me and said, listen, there's this fabulous new invention. It's called the video camera. So we'd like you to run the video camera department. Well, I didn't even know what it was. Never heard of it. What's a video camera? Well, in them days, Rocco, JVC's first video camera was actually a full-size suitcase with just a lens on the end of the suitcase. And, that was your video. So anyway, I started selling video cameras and getting really into all the technology and learning about it. And then one day the MD came to me and he said, look, Steve, he said, we've got a real problem. People are coming in and spending £2,000 on these suitcases, taking them home, charging them up, using them once, and then they gather dust for 10 years. what do we do about this? And I said, it's very, very simple. He said, what? I said, we teach people how to make a movie. And he said, well, how do we do that? I said, very simple. We run courses and we teach them to use a camera, not how they think it should be used, but how their eyes are used. And he went, that's fantastic. Let's do it. So then I started running public courses for just ordinary people who had bought these very early camcorders and teaching them how to make a movie. Very, very simple. Well, this is where the computer bits come in. So, of course, I needed something to make titles.
Right.
Because in them days, all we had was like black and white block text within the video camera itself. So I thought, what do we do here? So, of course, I was in the photographic industry. I got in touch with Commodore. So we got Commodore in, and Commodore brought in the Commodore Amiga A500. And we had two programs that we could use. One was called Scala for special effects, and there was another one called TV Text, which we used to create titles. And it was fantastic. And it just literally went from there. And then after a short while, I got headhunted by another company, did video for about 2 to 3 years, and then accidentally fell into IT. And that's it in a nutshell. It's just bizarre the way it happened. Just bizarre.
Hey, that's life, man. I mean, nothing, happens like, well, okay, I won't say nothing, but there's a lot of things that happen that you expect to happen that never happen. And then by some chance you meet this person, talk to this person, whatever, and you get into a spot, and that's just the way life plays out.
Yeah. It was amazing. I had an amazing time. I've had a great life. If something happened right now or tomorrow, I've got no complaints. I'm a very blessed, lucky, happy guy.
Do you have any hobbies outside of Linux? Out of YouTube, out of that whole sphere?
Hobbies, not really. My only main interest outside of computing as a whole is my family. My family comes first. Computing is second. Everything else is just a bonus, to be fair. I've dabbled in many things in my life. I've done cycle racing. I've ridden motorcycles, which I still do at my silly old age. I've done fishing. I've done, a lot of activities in my life. Really enjoyed them. But my passion is my family and computers.
In that order, and as it should be.
Yep, absolutely.
All right. So you mentioned about getting into computers through the video industry. So what was like your first computer that you touched?
Okay, so the first computer I ever touched was a Sinclair Spectrum. And it was the little tiny one, no tape decks, nothing. And I used to play a game on it, and it used to take, I can't remember how long, but I used to play this game from like 7 at night till like 4 or 5 in the morning, and it was called Barbarian. And all it was two little stick guys swinging a pretend stick sword, and it went tick, tick, and that was it. I was done. I was like, what is this? It's awesome. And I was done. Absolutely finished. That was it.
I think Ryan would love that game. Just 2 little stick figures. Yep, I think he would love that.
Oh, it was just amazing. But that, I mean, you're talking what? Very, very late 70s, maybe very early 80s. So, I mean,
yep.
That was it. I was done. I was just in love with computing.
So you go from that Sinclair. When did you first hear the word Linux?
Oh, my word. It was when I was involved with SCO Unix. And we had, obviously, a Windows network infrastructure where I worked, but we also had a SCO Unix server, and it was amazing. And it was kind of the transition from Unix over to very early Windows. And Unix had been so reliable and good. And we used to run about 35 users off of wired terminals into a single Unix server, and it did everything. And it was amazing. And then we went over to Windows, and, Windows 3.11, 3.11 for work groups, then 95. So I would say between Windows 95 and 98 is when I started thinking I want something more than this.
So what was that thing that made you want to try more?
Because I wanted it all. I wanted a Unix backend with a Windows front end. And of course it didn't exist. So I thought, let's go looking, let's go searching, and let's see what we can find. So I just happened to run into my first ever distribution of Red Hat with the original GNOME interface. And I thought, what is this? What am I doing here? What is this all about? And it blew me away. And I couldn't do anything with it. I couldn't even get it to load half the time. We were using, I dread to think what computers we were using. Everything was on floppy disk. And, I used to spend hours trying to load this thing up off floppy disks and achieving very little. But it was enough for me to realize that, hey, here's an awesome possibility, a Unix backend with a Windows front end. How cool would that be? And of course, it was free and open source. All right, it was Red Hat. But that then started me on a journey of discovery, really. And I messed about with some very obscure Linuxes. And then I ended up at the daddy of them all, Slackware. And I discovered really weird named repos like Fresh Meat. And I'm like, right, okay, do I really want to go here? What's Fresh Meat? And then anyway, and it kind of spiraled from there. And it just grew and grew. And it was just something that I picked up that I never, ever put down. Never had a name, really, but I never put it down.
Well, you mentioned about the floppy disks, and there were difficult times at that time. But I think that we didn't see how difficult they were. Like at the time, floppy disks were all we knew. So it was like, that was what you did for that time period. Now we look back and we're like, yeah, there was a lot of work involved and a lot of things that maybe are way easier now. Any other pros and cons to that first experience with Linux?
Yeah, I think the lack of life quality that we all take for granted today. You go out and you spend £3,000, £4,000, £5,000 or dollars on a computer. It's got an NVIDIA this, it's got a Threadripper that. You switch it on, it's up, bang, it's done. Back in the days when I started out, waiting an hour for something to load was commonplace.
Yep.
And you just accepted it. That's the way it was.
Yep.
And the thing that never ceases to blow me away now, I'm going to download a new game. Yeah, it's 56 gig. Well, I'm from a time when 56K was an issue to download. Now, there was no internet. It was all bulletin boards. It was just a completely different world.
Yeah. Yeah, and even moving forward, even starting out, it was dial-up and everything else. It took forever to do anything like that. So now you mentioned that you tried it. Now, did you stay with it right away, or did you continue to have Windows machines, or?
No, I stayed with it right away because I took the decision that I would invest in me for the rest of my life. So I started down the track of Microsoft certification, because I figured that would be my insurance policy for life. I figured if I got Microsoft certified, I'd be pretty much covered. So I went down the Microsoft certification route, got all my certifications done, was very, very happy, and it just blossomed from there. So it really was almost like a Jekyll and Hyde situation. So it was in the normal working day doing Windows. As SCO Unix was phased out and Windows became more powerful and more in-depth. And then by night, it was just Linux. It was just brilliant. Free and open source. Fill your boots.
So you jumped right in without any hesitation.
Yep, absolutely.
All right. Do you consider yourself a distro hopper, or did you once consider yourself a distro hopper and now stopped?
Yes and no. Yes, I'm a distro hopper. Have I stopped? No. Why am I a distro hopper? Because at the end of the day, I'm a little 8-year-old boy in Willy Wonka's sweet shop. And yes, I have my distro, which I love more than life itself. However, unlike my real life, where there's, one woman for life, so to speak, with Linux, I can fill my boots. Why should I limit myself to one? So, and also I see it as avoiding enlightenment, because every time I load a distro, I learn something new. Might not like it, but I learned something new, which is amazing.
Yep. Now, when you try a distro, do you try it in the default settings as like maybe a developer intended, or do you try to customize it to the way you want it?
No, what I basically do is I just load it up default, have a good look around it, try to get an idea where the developer's coming from and what he's actually intending the use for, and then I break the hell out of it.
Well, if anybody's been following your channel for any length of time, they know you pretty much tried every distro out there, every environment. Do you have any favorites as far as distros or environments are concerned?
Yep, absolutely. My two favorites of all time, first of all, are Peppermint Linux, of course, because I genuinely believe that's just an awesome distro for anybody and everybody. But actually, my secret guilty passion is also Puppy Linux, and I don't think that will ever die.
You should have been on Biddle for that episode of Puppy Linux.
Yeah, I should have been. You're right. I would have made Prophetic look like a newbie to it. But I discovered Puppy Linux many years ago when I was using the predecessor of Puppy Linux, in my opinion, which was called DSL, which was Damn Small Linux, and it actually fitted on a business card size CD-ROM, and it was something like 110 megs in size or something, and it was really cool. That then disappeared, and I got into Puppy Linux, and I can remember loading Puppy Linux up into RAM on Pentium P90 laptops with like 256 meg, not gig, meg of RAM, and it flew. And I thought, I've got to have a bit of this. I've got to have some of this. So I started playing with it, and then one day I went on YouTube and discovered Sneaky Linux's channel.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, this guy is so cool. I've got to have some of this. And he was doing little tutorials on this and that and the other. And I thought, do you know what? I'm going to do that. I can do that. I'm going to have a bit of this. So I started my channel up. ICOS was my first ever YouTube channel. Terrible, honestly. A child with a clapperboard could have done a better job. It was horrendous. It really was.
No, it wasn't. Come on.
It was terrible because I personally believe in life that no matter what it is, people buy people and people's passion. And that's how they get their enjoyment. If you're watching somebody, they could be cleaning a teacup, but if they're really passionate about it and excited, you're going to get people watch you. It's that simple. Whereas with ICOS, when I first, I had got a clue, and it was very scripted and very, it wasn't me.
Right.
So anyway, that kind of era passed. I then got into gaming in a big way, and this would have been 2004. And I just fell in love with a game from NCSoft called Guild Wars, the original Guild Wars.
Right.
Oh man, did I spend hours of my life on that game. Seriously, it was just a dream come true. It really was. So I guess I had a period of perhaps 3 to 4 years where I was using Puppy Linux quietly, but hammering Guild Wars. So then I woke up one day and I suddenly thought, you know what? Let's redo the channel. Let's get it sorted. Give people what they want, some passion, some enthusiasm. What do I know about? Well, I know Windows like the back of my hand. Nobody's interested in that. Puppy Linux. So I come up with the name Puppy Linux World, launched the channel, bang, and that was it. Started doing tutorials, was really passionate and enthusiastic and enjoyed it. And it just went from there, really. And that was it.
Well, let me ask you a question, because when we did the distro challenge for Puppy Linux on Biddle, everybody talked about that it's a great thing to have. But I guess the idea what we came up with was there has to be a specific use case for you to use Puppy Linux. So give us a good use case for Puppy Linux, someone could use it for.
Okay, so a great use case for Puppy Linux, it's your PC in your pocket. You don't need a PC. All you need is that USB thumb drive. And you can take it, plug it into any hardware, do what you've got to do, enjoy the pants out of it, take your thumb drive out, and there's no trace that you were ever even on that hardware. And I think that is so cool. The amount of times that I've used Puppy Linux to rescue a Windows XP install that's gone wrong, it's just a lifesaver. And it was a free bit of operating system, so it was just win-win. But Puppy Linux was sort of so ahead of the game for what it was. You know, you could take a USB thumb drive, you could create persistent files on it, so any changes you made would always be saved. You had this cool thing where it perhaps only took 500 megabyte of space of a 4 gigabyte thumb drive. But what you could then do is save all your applications on that wasted 3.5 gig without affecting the internal operating system, which is SFS files, which was so cool and so ahead of its time. The problem was, Rocco, 99.9% of people just didn't get it. It was as simple as that. It was like, what's this?
Right.
So, you know, I mean, it was so ahead of its game. Of course, now I personally feel it's been superseded. And that is pretty much run with the dolphin. The MEPI/Antic/MX community. Today, MX is everything Puppy always has been, and then some. So hence that's why. And also Barry Cooler, the original creator, kind of retired and stepped back from it. He's still evolved, but he was a little bit like Steve Jobs in a way. He was the driving force behind it. And when he kind of stepped back, it kind of fragmented and kind of went a little bit quiet. So
yeah. All right. Well, let's continue on with your YouTube channel for the moment. You had Puppy Linux, and then how does the channel evolve into what it is today?
Okay, so I was doing all sorts of things from Puppy Linux to distro reviews, and then I decided one day to do a rant video, and it was ridiculous. And so on a tutorial, I was perhaps getting 2,000 to 3,000 views per video. I did a rant video, 9,000 views. 13,000 views, ridiculous. And I thought, well, surely this is not what it's all about. But actually, people weren't watching the rant video for the rants. They were watching it for me being a clown, because that's basically what I was, just an utter clown. Paint it any colour you want. But I also realised that from doing those sorts of videos, it started pushing people's buttons, and it started getting the feedback and the reaction that I couldn't get out of people normally, which to me is very enlightening and very enriching. I love it when a person suddenly removes, you know, the facade and becomes themselves. And that, to me, is really interesting. It's great. So that's kind of how it started. I then decided one day, as my channel just reached about 17,500 subscribers, in my madness, that I'd do a really cool artistic wallpaper, which was a topless lady. Oh, and man, she was gorgeous. She was very artistic. It was very tastefully done. And of course, within about half an hour of the video going up, my channel got took down and banned instantly by YouTube for sexually explicit material, which I could never get my head around. Having said that, now in the cold light today, look, maybe it was demeaning women. I personally thought it was very artistic. So I thought, right, what do I do now? Do I pack it up, call it a day, or do I start all over again? So I started all over again as English Bob. Simple as that. And this is where I am today.
Well, I'd like to go back to a theme that I keep hearing over and over again, and you mentioned it earlier, was that people, you know, you said, oh, well, I was a clown, or I was acting like a clown. I don't believe that was the case. I believe people responded to you, the person. And I think that no matter what you're talking about, whether it's Puppy Linux or whether it's Linux or something else, or I think people respond to you specifically, and they respond to individuals, and that's what brings them. And I think that's the most important thing, actually.
Yeah, absolutely. And I say people do buy people, and they buy people's passion. And, you know, some of the best Twitchers and YouTubers that I see are not the scantily dressed ones. They're not the ones in Yuga Boss suits. They're just really passionate, fun, genuine people. And yep. I think that's fantastic. Absolutely fantastic.
Yep. So, but you have on your YouTube channel, you have another series that you do, which is, it's called EB, Zeb, Garth, and You Lot.
Yep.
And you're up to, I think, what, episode 40, I think it is?
Yep.
So how did this start out? And people need to watch this series. It's awesome.
It's your fault.
It's not my fault. It's your fault.
Your fault. Because you, as you know, I hold you guilty as charged for almost transforming the Linux community from what I was totally used to all of a sudden this really great, cool place to hang out. And that was because of Big Daddy, yourself, and I don't mean to be rude. I'm sorry. I can never remember the other guy. He was a super guy. I used to watch quite a bit of his stuff. Was it Rob?
Rob Collins.
Rob Collins, yeah. Fabulous guy. And I just thought, how cool is this? And then, of course, I came on the Biddle shows a couple of times, and I think the colour drained out of your face the minute you saw EB appear on your lobby. Really, can we do this? Really? And that was it. I just thought, do you know what? Let's do a UK version that's just some regular guys having a bit of a laugh, but obviously within limitations, but just sharing the Linux experience with everybody. And I was shocked. We've got women on the channel, which is totally awesome. We've got people of all colours, all faiths, all religions. It's amazing. It's wonderful. And all of a sudden, all these things that are kind of rammed down your throat every day by the media and everything else, all of a sudden you see through the fog and you realise that actually we're all just people and we're just sharing a passion, which is so cool.
Yep. It takes all kinds. And that's what makes up our community, dude. That's awesome.
It is. It's absolutely brilliant.
All right, so getting back to Linux itself, you landed on the PEP, right?
On the PEP. Yeah. On the PEP. My beloved Peppermint. Absolutely. Well, the thing is, Rocco, I've tried so many distros, but just to come back to a previous point, people are my drug. What do I mean by that? Well, one of my favourite things right through my life is helping others. No matter how silly they think they are or how gifted they think they are. I love going out in the back garden in the morning and giving the birds some bread. It makes me feel really warm inside. I don't know why. I get the same sort of buzz off of helping people.
Yep.
So that's really where my passion came from. And having tried a gazillion distros, having built Debian, Arch, I've done Slack, I've done Gentoo, everything else, I realised that PEP was the ideal distro for everybody.
And you believe that to this day?
I genuinely do believe that to this day. Now, I'm not saying Peppermint is better than anything else out there, or Peppermint will suit, guy and girl A and B because. What I'm trying to say is anybody on the planet, young or old, new, experienced or newbie, can pick Peppermint up, stick it in the PC, and do you know what? They'll have a great time. And I think that's just fantastic and wonderful.
I think it is too. I think the most important thing is for people to find that distro, for them. I mean, it may not be Peppermint, it may be something else for somebody else, but to actually find that distro that you feel the most comfortable with is like the most comfortable thing.
Yeah, it really is. And that's when people's passion shines. It really does. And I love the fact, I always think Linux's Achilles heel is too much choice, because I think that's almost as bad as no choice. I really do. Having said that, too much choice gives you a richness that no choice never can. And I think it's amazing to have one of your shows on a Saturday night and you've got a guy running Debian i3 with gaps. You've got a guy, by the way, did you know I run Arch? If I hear that once more, really, somebody's going to pay. Especially that guy. What's that other guy's name? Ryan, is it? If I hear him say that once more, don't bubble. You got people running Gentoo, running Slack. You've got people like the amazing Mr. Eric Dubois doing all this work on Arca Linux to encourage people to get into Arch Linux. There's just so many awesome developers out there. And I just think it's so wonderful and rich that, like life, like people, you can have 23 different coloured people from 23 faiths, different genders, different beliefs. But when they come into your Big Daddy show, they're all just passionate Linux enthusiasts. And I think that's fantastic. I really do.
They're all just people, man.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you still use any Windows or Mac operating systems anywhere?
Yep. I use Windows 7 as a daily driver. But that's because I refuse to limit myself to just Linux for the sole purpose of saying, hey, I only use Linux. I think that's ridiculous. I believe that in anything in life, you have a toolbox. It doesn't matter whether you're a parent, whether you drive a car, whether you're whatever. You have a toolbox, and you try and take each tool out to make the job the easiest. It's that simple. For me, Linux has come, it's unrecognizable from when I started using it on the desktop, and it's just amazingly wonderful. However, it's not there yet. It's not Linux's fault, but because of proprietary and closed source software, until Linux has 100% bridged that gap on the desktop, I'm still forced to use Windows. Simple as that.
Hey, we talk about it all the time, dude. You got to use whatever works for your situation. It's the way it is.
It is. I also find Windows very nostalgic, because you have to remember I spent 25 years adminning it, pretty much every flavor that's ever been. So for me, it's kind of a trip of nostalgia as well. I don't know, it's kind of like that comfort pillow. You know what I mean? It's always, but what never ceases to amaze me is that, you know, I'll perhaps go for 2 or 3 months just solely on the Linux, hammering it. And then when I come back and load Windows up, I'm like, wow, hasn't Linux really come an awful long way? Yep. Whereas back in the day, you used to load Linux up, and I used to think, why can't you be more like Windows? Well, no, it's almost reversed and the other way around. Why can't Windows be more like Linux?
Well, I want to go back to something you said, because now I remember what it was.
Cool.
Choice. The choice being the fact that it's, I think, and you kind of said it the same way, that choice is Linux' biggest pro and its biggest con. Like, it is its biggest benefit and it's its biggest downfall, because with choice, you get tons of fragmentation. Yep. Okay. But with choice, you give people the opportunity to not be alienated from giving them only one thing.
Yep.
So I think choice is
awesome. It is, but it's also a two-edged sword. If you give 50,000 users Microsoft Windows 7, it's an absolute piece of cake to help them out. If you give 50,000 users 50,000 different versions of Linux, good luck helping them out, because you can't never ever possibly know everything.
Right.
It's impossible.
So do you think that there should be some type of standard in Linux as far as getting behind one distro, one desktop environment, and pushing that? Not to say that you would remove all fragmentation, but to say this is the Linux for everybody type thing.
Yeah, I'd love to have a Peppermint Linux for the masses that works as equally well as Windows, that everybody can just say, do you know what? I don't want Windows anymore, and I can move to Distro X, whatever that Distro X would be, because it's identical. What scares the pants out of me, and what I can foresee happening in the future, which worries me to death, is Linux becoming more and more fragmented and really becoming a nerdy, techie, geeky's guilty pleasure. I can then also see Microsoft launching Microsoft Linux, which will be a closed source proprietary version of Linux with their DirectX bits in and everything else in order to keep all the game developers happy. And then I can see Linux really on the desktop fading away to the underground position of just being a real geek hacker's operating system. Nothing more. And there's nothing I want more passionately than to see a standardized Linux distro that, for whatever reason or however it does it, just find its way onto everybody's PCs, because that would be so cool.
Well, that was one of my predictions for the year, was that Microsoft was going to release a Linux version of Microsoft. Now, I may be a little ahead of my time here, but it will happen.
No, I think you're pretty spot on. And I think Microsoft Linux 1 will be out, I predict, within 24 months, tops. And, you know, I think Microsoft long ago realized that, you know, the cash cow that was desktop operating systems was over. We now have Microsoft Windows Azure web cloud platform, and it's the platform on the planet. Anybody and everybody. My youngest son is a senior software developer for a big company in the UK. And he says to me, Dad, if you do anything, write an app, do a database, absolutely anything. It's all done on the Azure platform. Sure, there's other options, but Microsoft have got it so sewn up, skin tight. And I think, Microsoft Linux 1 would be a perfect vehicle for them to get rid of Windows 10. Because where do you go with Windows 10 from here, really? So my only other concern about Microsoft Linux 1 or whatever it's called is that because I feel it would be a proprietary closed source, I do worry that all the telemetry, key logging and data gathering would be transferred over to that distribution. And hence, that's why your other Linux distributions would become so hacker techie type. Do you know what I mean? For the enthusiasts, rather than bringing Linux out to the masses.
You think that they would ever release an operating system open source?
No. Open source for them doesn't make dollars. And at the end of the day, paint it any colour you want. It's all about the greenback.
This is true.
It's sad. It's miserable. I find it despicable. I really, really do. But unfortunately, that's the bottom line.
All right. So getting back to using Linux and on a daily basis, do you have, I know I asked Zeb this question. He was like, he doesn't even have a workflow. Do you have a workflow, a specific set of software that you use during the day that you need to have?
No. It's my day basically consists of, what am I doing on the Linux? So I've got a secondary machine here that always has Linux. I've got my primary main gaming PC, which at the minute has Windows 7. I've got two laptops. One has Peppermint, one has MX18, and I have a Chromebook. So this is how weird it is. I tend to do all my discovery of Linux on my secondary PC, keep my main PC with Windows 7 for gaming, because it's handy, and then I watch all my Netflix and all that sort of stuff on the Chromebook, because I just love Chromebooks. I think they're amazing. Yep.
Well, I have Windows on a dual boot on another drive on this machine. So this is my main PC with, a NVMe drive for Linux and a separate NVMe drive for Windows. So I do pretty much everything on here, but I do dual boot. So
yeah. But that's sensible. I have to be honest with you. I cannot abide dual booting. I hate it. And that's why I kind of have so many silly machines, because I like them to have a singular purpose. But I get the dual booting thing, and hey, why not? If it fits your lifestyle and workflow, if it gives you a little bit more life quality, great. Fill your boots.
Right. So is there any software that's not currently available for Linux that you want to see? Would there be anything that you could get, that you could name, that you could then get rid of your Windows 7 machine?
Yeah, dead easy. First of all, DirectX 9, DirectX 10 and 11 released as open source, which I can't see is ever going to happen. And the other thing I would love to see is Adobe go cloud-based.
Yep.
Because then I think that really opens the Linux platform up. I think the whole world is going cloud-based for everything. And I think the day that Adobe switched from a physical product to you can use Photoshop or Adobe Premiere Pro or whatever in the cloud, I think that's the day when Linux comes out the shadows and into the sunshine, because there's no reason to use a Mac or a Windows machine anymore. Stick the Linux on there, you're done.
That would be such a huge bonus to be cloud-based. But
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, so what is it that you most use Linux for? You said you have a couple different machines, Netflix you use on the Chromebook, or a gaming PC, but do you use mostly for leisure, or?
No, really, it's discovery and enjoyment. So I've made my own distro called Ubuntu Linux, of course, which was built and based on Ubuntu 16.04. I am threatening this weekend with the release of Debian going to Buster to release a much sought after distro called Badexian, which sounds like Gandalf's third cousin removed out of Lord of the Rings, I know, but that would basically be Salient OS by Silent Robot, but on a Debian based. So it would be a distro for gamer streamers. And I also love kind of dissecting and coming up with ideas of how could I build a distro that a lot of other people would really like to use, but for whatever reason don't want to build.
Right.
And I also do a tiny little bit of coding just to keep my hand in, because I believe in a very old saying, no matter what it is, if you don't use it, you lose it. So I like to keep my hand in it. It's just a bit of basic C++ stuff, whereas my son's more into C# and Xamarin and all these other languages. I also do love a bit of PHP and Perl as well. So
wow,
just keep my hand in.
Now, do you publish any of these like on GitHub or anything, or is this just for your personal use?
This is just purely for my personal pleasure. The other thing I like to do is keep my hand in with the networking side, because I really do miss the challenge. You know, back in the day, I so missed the MD coming down saying, right, you've got 6 hours, you've got a site in the north, a site in the south, they've got to be on the same networks, and they've got to be able to talk to each other over, 56K modems securely. See in about 6 hours when you've done it. And I'm like, right, okay, what do we do here? Righto, okay, lovely. So I enjoy remoting into other boxes and fiddling around and breaking things down, seeing how VPNs work, and is this really keeping me secure, or is this just another money-making spin from company XYZ? And I love all that sort of stuff.
Well, what is your opinion on that? Do you believe that VPNs are secure generally, or?
No. There's only one way a VPN is 100% secure, and that is if we run a VPN from your house to my house, and there's only my network and your network on that VPN. The minute those two networks connect to the internet, Rocco, you're wide open. Anybody who thinks that they can achieve any form of anonymity whilst using the internet is seriously deluded. It's just not going to happen. Because believe you me, buddy, this week I tried out a great Russian distro called Astra Linux. And I thought, how cool is this? And this has all come about by Russia wanting to insulate itself from the rest of the world. And I was watching a video today on the BBC website here in the UK, and it was President Putin discussing and saying how sorry he was that all these sailors had died on this Russian submarine, nuclear submarine, and they choked to death on smoke. And right behind him, right behind his head, is this computer screen running Astra Linux. And I just thought, how cool is that? It's actually in the Kremlin, you know what I mean? That is really cool. So yeah, I just love digging around in bits and pieces like this. And it was Jim Atlaw that brought my attention to that. Another great guy.
Yep, another YouTuber.
Yeah, and the other thing today is there's so many cool YouTubers that just simply weren't around when I started Linux, that today we all take for granted. Absolutely just take for granted. And it's fantastic. So rich and fantastic.
Yep. So do you have any other stories of your admin days of going through craziness?
Yeah, but not that I could share with you publicly.
All right, we'll continue on with Linux.
Yeah, absolutely. No, all I will say is I can remember back in the day discovering a hacking group called the Frozen Crew, spelled PH, and thinking, wow, I wonder what that's all about. And that was long before the days of Anonymous or anything like that. Very, very cool, but still very murky. Not a world you'd want to get involved with, put it like that.
All right, so what is it that drives your love of Linux? Is it like the openness? Is it that you can customize it? What is it that drives your passion for it?
Very, very simple. I'd love to be able to turn round to a working family whose mum and dad have got 2 jobs each, and at the end of the week they're still struggling to put food on the table for the family, despite doing 2 jobs each, paying the taxes, working really, really hard. I would love to be able to turn around to them and say, do you know what? That Windows 7 computer that you've got, let me help you turn it into a powerhouse with Linux. And that's what drives me. It's just my passion to help other people.
Yep. All right. So you've installed every operating system and distro under the sun.
Yep.
You obviously run into issues with those operating systems and installing them. So what would you consider the biggest issue that you ran into that you were able to solve that made you feel really good about it?
Oh, my word. The list is long and distinguished. I would actually turn it round on its head, because I always try and project myself on YouTube as the absolute incompetent, bumbling idiot.
But you're not.
Oh, yeah, I am. Because what I try to do is represent those millions out there who consider themselves bumbling idiots. So that's how I try and react. And the times I've had distros break on me, and I've just done a rant video, and everybody's connected with it because they're all sitting there thinking, oh, I felt like that 2 days ago. Really? That is so cool. Whereas if I come on and well, hey, actually, my arch distro broke and I did this, did that, bang, and it's back up and we sorted people. Everybody's like, who's this big head? What's this guy? Do you know what I mean? So I love actually immersing myself in the world of the bumbling idiot who says, what do we do? What's this piece of junk? And everybody's like, I said that 2 days ago. That's amazing, dude. And all right, it might not be politically correct. It might not always be family friendly. But I always try and do it with fun in mind. So I hope people see that sometimes it's very dry, it's very tongue-in-cheek, but it should always be fun. It should never be personally upsetting to anybody. But people, I hope, can connect with it and say, oh, my word, I installed Distro XYZ and I wasted 6 hours of my life.
But that goes back to what we talked about before, is that's why people watch, for the realness, because it's you and what you bring to those videos. Anybody can sit there behind a camera and say, do this, do this, do this in sequence. But it's the passion behind it. It's the guy behind it that they're relating to. So I think that's awesome, dude.
Well, thank you very much, Rocco. You're too kind, buddy. But yeah, it's very rewarding. Put it like that. It's a wonderful way of spending and sharing your spare time with what in essence is everybody on the globe, if they want to be a part of it. It's great.
All right, so everybody learns differently. Some people learn by watching videos. Some people learn by reading a tutorial. Is there one best place you think to go for Linux help? Is it YouTube? Is it wikis?
If you want me to be totally honest, without it sounding plastic or silly, yeah, I'd say Big Daddy Linux Live. Seriously, because I think you've got such a wonderful spread of developers, of people who have used these distros for years, and I think the chat is so natural and real. I love watching the text chat as much as I do watching the actual live show. And you find that people pick up so much, and all of a sudden you've got access to Martin Wimpress or Alan Pope or Tux Digital or you or Ryan or and Carl Schneider's in the chat and he's helping people, and then Dolphin come. I mean, you don't get any more richer pool than that, do you, for helping people? So my advice would be check out Big Daddy Linux Live every Saturday night. Don't miss it.
And I did not pay you for that.
My PayPal address, Rocco, is... No, seriously, dude, I am deadpan serious. I think you've done so much for everybody, from a top-end developer to an utterly incompetent noob. He doesn't know what he wants, but just knows he needs, or she needs something. And, you have people like Barbara on the show. She's an amazing lady. She blows me away every time I see her.
Yep.
You've got people like Wendy Hill, you've got Heather. There's such a rich mix of people on there that everybody that comes onto Biddle can relate to somebody and think, do you know what? If I could just start asking him a question in the text, they always get a reply, which is amazing. So yeah, I'd say Big Daddy, absolutely.
Well, that goes back to the people in the community, because it's each person, including yourself. I talked about your passion for your videos and talking to people and helping people, and you are just one person that makes up the community. You put another one next to you and another one next to you, and it ends up being an awesome place. It
really does. But I still blame you for that and give you all the plaudits, because you were the catalyst. You had the foresight to make it happen, because before you, it was just a whole bunch of fragmented people on a whole bunch of fragmented platforms, and you brought that together, which was just amazing. Absolutely amazing.
So how would you say the Linux community on a whole, I mean, you've been in Linux for a long time, many years. So how on a whole have people treated you in the Linux community through the years?
I've had the full spectrum, from RTFM to, hey, welcome to this group. Would you like some help? So I think the full spectrum is still there today. I think there's still a lot of Linux snobbery. However, it's only just dawned on me why that snobbery is there. And I've always been so anti the RTFM brigade. However, I do kind of understand with distros like Arch, like Slack, like Gen 2. There's no point you installing Gen 2 if you don't have the knowledge to maintain it when it breaks.
This is true.
I get that. That's if you want to use Linux and just as a user and enjoy the pants out of it, distrowatch.com's bristling with all these awesome distros. Just download one, stick it on and enjoy it. If you want to be in a position where you can run and genuinely maintain and admin a Gen 2 installation, then you've got to put the effort in. And I seriously doubt if you would be married or in a family, because you'd have no life. Every waking hour is going to be compiling software. Best of luck with that.
All right, so what can we do? What can each person do to make the experience better, the community experience?
I think just, if you want me to be honest, I think be like a flower. I think and open up. Make them self-accessible, make them self-approachable, spread the word. And most of all, if you're brand new to Linux, never ever be afraid to approach a Linux person for help, because you might just be shocked and actually pleasantly surprised at the response that you get. Whereas back in the day, it was RTFM, see you later.
Yeah, it was. I ran into that many times.
Yeah.
All right, give me one thing that is the biggest problem in Linux, something you dislike the most, and one thing you like about Linux the most.
The one thing I love about Linux the most is to take something that's not readily available and then make it available to everybody. And now I'm thinking more about people in various different countries who can't eat from day to day, let alone week to week, that people in the Western world sometimes totally take for granted. I love the fact that they can perhaps, by whatever means, get hold of a computer. They can wallop Linux on it, and all of a sudden they're modern, bang up to date, and it's not cost them a penny. I think that's mind-blowingly amazing. Something that I hate the most about Linux is I wish Linux would just firebomb Microsoft Offices and steal all the code to DirectX and just incorporate it into Linux. I really do. That is
not really. You don't.
No. Metaphorically speaking, my biggest pet hate with Linux is I want it to replace Windows on the desktop, and here in 2019, it still ain't there. It's getting there, but it ain't there yet.
Yep. So, going back to, you said DirectX and stuff, is that the one thing that you would change about Linux if you could?
Yeah, absolutely. I would, but what I would do is I wouldn't change DirectX. I would love to be able to turn back time. If I could turn back time 10 years, I would force all game developers to make an OpenGL version of the game, because that would have resolved the issue. And then nobody would care about DirectX. But because DirectX is proprietary, it can't be unlocked and shared freely. I think companies like Valve and Steam have done amazing stuff. Wine is just amazing, but it ain't there yet. There's still a reason in 2019 to run a Windows 7 machine for gaming reasons.
Right. So I ask everybody, and everybody has a different answer to this question. Where do you think Linux is headed on a whole? Do you think we'll see that day where we have the year of the Linux desktop?
I used to genuinely believe that with a passion, but I'm now scared that no, we will never ever see the day of the Linux desktop. And the reason I say that is because from what I can see myself in real life, the younger up and coming generations look at a desktop computer as a museum piece. And that's what scares me. They're more into phones or tablets, and that's their passion and their pleasure. Good luck to them. But I do fear the clock is ticking, and if Linux doesn't suddenly become the desktop operating system of choice. I fear it never will be.
Right.
It will always remain the realm of enthusiasts.
So desktop Linux may just fade out into the sunset.
I don't think it'll fade out into the sunset. I think it'll go underground and become purely the realm of tech geeks. I really, really do. And, there's some great distros that, Kali Linux, fantastic distro. I wouldn't want to run it as a daily, but I could see, groups of people just running Kali Linux whilst everybody else is on the phone.
Right. Well, to be honest with you, people I talk to in everyday life, when they talk about computers, they're not talking about desktops. They're talking about laptops or tablets or whatever. So thinking of all the reasons that you chose Linux, like when you chose to switch over to Linux, thinking of all the reasons why you did, do those reasons still apply to you today?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, what's your choices? Windows 10, give your life away to Redmond for free. BSD, really. We all know what BSD stands for. It's a family-friendly show. Don't go there, Rocco. BSD, great as a service system on the desktop. If I can use this word, it sucks, dude. It really sucks hard. It really does. Apple Mac. To me, Apple Mac is always been bought for one of two purposes. Either originally it was part of the graphics industry, and I get why they love the Apple Mac so much, or it was a piece of jewelry.
Yeah.
And to me today, it's a beautiful piece of jewelry, but nevertheless, people don't buy it for the Apple Mac OS. They buy it because of the aesthetics and the actual hardware itself. So that for me has always been a no-no. The big shining light for me has been Chromebooks. And I think Chromebooks are the laptop of the future. I think it's wonderful how students and younger generations have embraced the Chromebook. I think that's great. I think it's fantastic that it's really underneath the skin. It's built and based off of Gen 2. The only thing that worries me is that magic word, Google, because you never know from one day to the next what's going to come on your TV screens on the news. You never know what they're going to do next.
Yep, this is true. All right. Is there anything else you want to share with people?
No, not really. Just to say thank you to everybody who's ever supported me, either with the rise or with money or with time or with effort. I'm very, very grateful. I don't know how much life I've got left on this earth, but I know one thing, I'm going to enjoy as much of it as I can, A, helping other people, and B, being an absolute thorn in your side of dread and horror every time you run a Big Daddy show, because you never know when EB's going to pop in there.
Well, from our conversation, you obviously have a technical background, but I think one of the biggest and most awesome things about your YouTube channel is the fact that you are able to take something and break it down for people, whether they're a new user or not. And I think that because when you can relate to people and you can talk to people on their own level, even if it's something that's above their level, that is a quality that a lot of people don't have.
Yeah, so, I totally agree with you. But thank you very, very much. You're too kind.
All right. So how can people get in touch with you?
Dead easy via YouTube, the standard Gmail address, Linux Rubbish. Great name for a Gmail, don't you think? Linux Rubbish at gmail.com. They're very, very welcome to come into the Discord. Or as I have discovered today, if you actually make an effort and join Big Daddy's Telegram group, you'll find some of the coolest people on the planet in there, day and night. So knock yourselves out.
I can't deny that. There are some cool people in there.
Yep, there really are.
All right, that wraps up our discussion. Thank you so much, EB, for joining us.
Thank you very much, Rocco, for taking the time, and please carry on what you're doing, dude. It's making such a difference globally. Seriously, it really is. And thank you very much for your hard work and your effort.
Thanks, man.
You're very welcome.
Thank you all for joining us this week as we spotlight the best thing about Linux, our community. Until next time, long live Linux.
Cheers.
So without allowing this to degrade the conversation into a spiral, is your toilet paper over or under?
Oh, right down the middle. That's all I'm going to say. Right down the middle.
Oh, I love it. Okay, we'll leave it right there.
Awesome. Strange buzz and a kick out of helping people. I do, and I just love people. I don't care who you are. I don't care what your ethnicity or your colour, or whether you wear a burqa, or whether you're a Christian or Jew, whatever. To me, you're I see a person, yep. And I just think that's so. I've had my life enriched. So it's like you. I mean, we've never met in real life, but instantly in the pit of your stomach when something's right. It's like we're sitting here. Nothing's forced. Nothing's awkward. Nothing. Oh, well, maybe some of the things I say are a bit awkward. But you know what I mean? You just know. Sometimes when you go for a beer, somebody, and you get in the bar, and from the minute you get in the bar, you think, I don't know what it is, but this ain't quite right.
Right.
I mean, the first ever time I met Zeb and Ghosty in a pub in the UK, we had a beer, did a live stream. It was like we'd known each other for 30 years. And to me, that's magic. That's the magic of people. It's priceless. There's enough vileness and death and horror in the world. Let's bring a bit of fun and a bit of love and a bit of laughter, a bit of enjoyment to something we're all passionate about, Linux. And it just works, dude. It really does. And I love it when life's just like everything clicks. It's like clockwork. You're not got to worry about somebody saying something to your face and saying something different behind your back. Everybody's just enjoying the set. It's lovely. It's so natural. You can't make that. You can't buy it. You can't manufacture. You've either got it or you ain't. It's that simple.